Who really invented Bitcoin? Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Minor Issues Podcast. I'm Mark Thornton at the Mises Institute. With all the financial fanfare for Bitcoin reaching over $2 trillion in market capitalization, it's curious that we don't actually know the person who invented Bitcoin. However, we do definitely know who is responsible for the idea of Bitcoin. And today we celebrate the 50th anniversary of Friedrich von Hayek's address to the Geneva Gold and Monetary Conference in Lausanne, Switzerland, titled International Money, which was delivered in the depths of the great stagflation of the 1970s. This was the worst economy dating back to the Great Depression, which was ushered in by the repeal of the Bretton Woods gold standard in 1971, and this lasted for more than a decade. Before I give you an abbreviated synopsis of this important speech, let me premise it by stating that Hayek was one of the most brilliant scholars of humanity, especially economics, of course, but also history, psychology, law, and much more. An early advocate of socialism himself, Hayek learned economic science from the great Austrian economist and became the most brilliant economic theorist of his time and a foremost advocate of the liberal market order. After publishing his most famous popular book, The Road to Serfdom, in 1944, Hayek founded the Mont Pelerin Society of 39 academics in 1947 to fight the intellectual battle against the rising tide of socialism. Against all odds, and in a profession dominated by social democrats and fascist technocrats, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1974 for his contributions to monetary economics and the business cycle. This lecture was subsequently published and is known as Choice in Currency, a Way to Stop Inflation. Hayek continued to work on these ideas of privately issued competing currencies and published the book The Denationalization of Money in the late 1970s. This contribution by Hayek is considered by experts to be the source idea for Bitcoin, which was launched in the aftermath of the global financial crisis as the first cryptocurrency. To be sure, Hayek reminds the reader that a vital pillar of all human success was the adoption of monetary commodities, ultimately in the form of coined metal. But he opens the essay with the following, quote, "The chief root of our present monetary troubles is, of course, the sanction of scientific authority which Lord Keynes and his disciples have given to an age-old superstition that by increasing the aggregate of money expenditure, we can lastingly ensure prosperity and full employment." Just a few years prior to this speech, the U.S. and the world rejected the last vestige of the gold standard, which had provided the foundation for 300 years of remarkable increasing economic prosperity. This success became increasingly dampened and distorted with the rise of state socialism, central banking, and mass warfare. Unleashed government monetary authorities could not be prevented from abusing their power, igniting inflation, and generating business cycles and crises. Hayek himself blames himself personally for not doing more to expose the fallacy of Keynes's economics. Hayek actually showed how inflationary spending can bring about full employment, but his demonstration made it clear that such created jobs are inherently unstable, untenable, and irrational. And in the meantime, all workers suffer lost real wages from the subsequent higher prices. In other words, this approach to economic policy is, quote, essentially the policy of a desperado who has nothing to lose, end quote. Many of us do not remember, but the experience of the post-gold standard 1970s thoroughly discredited the Keynesian approach currently in use by politicians and central bankers worldwide. Instead of doing something at the time to restore and defend money, as suggested by Congressman Ron Paul and President Reagan, we instead allowed central banks to adopt palliative measures like inflation targeting and central bank transparency. In this speech, Hayek warns us that all economists, quote, will continue to offer their quack remedies, end quote. Hayek warns us all about any political control, as he saw as fatal from the scientific point of view. He places no faith in any government reforms or control mechanisms to work in the long run. He wrote, quote, I see not the slightest hope that any government or institution subject to political pressure will ever be able to act in such a manner, end quote. Reflecting on his long life of deliberate and proper observation and analysis, Hayek noted that, quote, in my opinion of governments has steadily worsened, end quote. Hayek realizes that governments use their monetary powers to defraud and plunder the people at the behest of politicians and pressure groups. And he further realized that there is no government-constructed remedy to restore sound money and limited governments. Money is too important to be left in the hands of politicians or mainstream economists. He warned against monetary union, such as the future euro, and instead argued for money and banking freedom internationally and called for the repeal of legal tender laws that supported monetary monopolies. He then explained how such competing monies would work, how easily it would function, and how we would benefit, and he even addresses some charges against this future system. Some of us can see the benefits already of even when small windows of opportunity open for using alternatives to government money. Gold has been legalized in the U.S., and many stack gold and silver against inflation. Argentinian President Javier Milei proposes restoring the free society by opening up its economy to dollarization and an end to monetary policy in that country. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are also such a move in the right direction, but one that has been greatly hobbled by government intervention. These are all really just stepping stones to the cure that Hayek envisioned, freeing cryptocurrency from all government shackles, re-legalizing gold and silver money without any government control or interference, and denationalizing national currencies to ensure their ultimate destruction is our agenda ahead. Now, I know it's hard to believe that someone born in the late 1800s could be the inspiration of Bitcoin of the 21st century, but this is what many cryptocurrency theorists also maintain. And I will link a short video of a clip at the end of this episode to reinforce the claim of Hayek as the inspiration for Bitcoin based on his scholarly writings.
See, the great trouble is the money wasn't allowed to develop further. After 200 or 300 years of coins, all governments put their hands and stopped any further developments. They were not allowed to experiment on it. Money hasn't been improved. Money has rather become worse in the course of time, because unlike, you refer to Menger, and it's quite true that Menger, and before him Hume and Mandeville, made law, language, money, the three paradigms of spontaneously grown institutions. Now, fortunately, law and language have been allowed to develop. Money has originated in the original form, but as soon as it was there in its most primitive form, it was frozen. Government said it must not develop any further. And what we have had since in development were matters of government inventions, mostly wrong, mostly abuses of money. And I have come to the position of asking, has monetary policy ever done any good? I don't think it has. I think it has done only harm. And that's why I am now pleading for what I've called denationalization of money. I don't believe that we shall ever have a good money again before we take the thing out of the hands of government. And we can't take them violently out of the hands of government. All we can do is, by some sly roundabout way, introduce something they can't